Well, Donna, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAT Chat podcast.
Nice to see you. Thank you
Nice
for
to
having
see
me
you.
on.
Yes, yes. I want to call you Dr. Marks. So official.
Oh, you can call me Donna.
I call you Donna because we're girls like that.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, listen, when I was made aware of who you are, I was like, oh my gosh, this woman and I are like soul twins because we both have a mission. I have a mission to save the world. And you're like, I'm going to save a million people. And I just love that, you're dreaming big. It's like, I'm done playing small. And I was like, so is Donna. It's
Yes.
like, we need to step up in the world and
Yes.
own it, right?
Yes. And there are some of us that are doing that we can't just sit back and watch people self-destruct anymore. We really want to help people to see the truth and to feel enlightened and inspired and free and to be able to go out and then light their own candles.
Right. Exactly. And you wrote a book,
Yes.
an amazing book called The Maze, right?
Exit the maze. Yes.
Exit
Exit
the
the
maze.
maze. One
Sorry,
addiction.
exit. Yes, not the maze. Exit the maze.
That's okay.
We don't want to stay in
It
the
is the
maze.
maze.
It is a maze. Oh my gosh. But and I thought, what a perfect metaphor. Those of us who have ever experienced addiction, it's like you blindly walk in, unwittingly walk into the maze, and then you can't get out. And the predominant experiences are feelings of frustration, despair, hopelessness,
Yes.
trying to get out, but you can't. So,
Yes.
um,
Or you think you're out and you realize you're only deeper in.
right, right. Was that your experience?
With some of my addiction, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. For example, like cigarettes, I quit, all the time.
Quit every day. Yeah. Some are worse than others. Oh my
But
goodness.
that illusion that I have control, that I'm actually quitting because I do quit all the time, that illusion brings me deeper into the denial, which takes me deeper into the maze.
Deeper into the maze. Well, why don't we start with a little bit of a backstory? Maybe you can share a little bit about your journey and how you decided to write the book.
Okay, I'll be happy to. I actually was born into addiction,
Oh,
and I decided that I would never be like that. I had, my mother was very loving and kind, but my father and my stepfather were not. Well, let me put it this way. My stepfather actually was. I loved him very dearly. I actually bonded with him, but whenever he would drink, a monster came out. And so that monster was very scary and inappropriate in a lot of ways. And I kind of went further and further inside myself and internalized that something was wrong with me, that he would be yelling at me or abusing me. And so that wound kind of festered in there for quite a while. So that by the time I was a teenager, actually at age 12, I started smoking, and it was nonstop from the first cigarette and then later on alcohol. And, it just got worse and worse. So I did have a connection with a higher power early on that would tell me, it's not your fault. And that really kept me, I think, sane. But, as time went on and things got worse and worse and worse, I couldn't contain myself with just that voice anymore, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to or help me work out my pain. So it consumed me, and along with it, to cope with that, addiction started. So I was a teenager. I dropped out of school, got married. I was divorced by the time I was 18. I went to night school, got a diploma, and I was functioning pretty well. I didn't realize I had the alcohol component of addiction, and it progressed over time. But at the same time, I was very functional. I had vowed I'd never drink like that, and I I went to school, and that same voice that told me it's not my fault told me I could do better. So I kept working at getting better and better. And so I had two parallel parts of me going on. I was never got a DUI. I was never homeless. No one ever told me I had a drinking problem or an addiction issue. I did start going for help early on in my life. They didn't understand addiction. They didn't understand addiction in the family and the effects it has on children. And this is going back a ways. So,
I was going to say, where did you seek out help, through like therapy or a?
well, I went. My first source of help was a psychiatrist I was referred to when I tried to end my life as a teenager, and he
Oh,
prescribed me benzodiazepines to cope with my anxiety. And then later on, when I had a child, and I was really not doing a good job at parenting myself, and I was under a lot of stress, and so I took myself and the child to therapy, and there was no reference to any substances or anything. And we did everything we were told to do, but things did not get better. And so by the time I was 30, I hit like an emotional bottom, and I did go for treatment.
all this
And
by 30?
yes,
Oh my gosh, that was so much.
yes,
Yeah. I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So anyhow, I continued though, even though I got treated for the alcohol, I had untreated addiction. It took me a long time to realize that I would go from one thing to the next. I give up one thing, and then the addiction would show up somewhere else. So this went on and for many, many years, and I really wasn't any happier after a great length of sobriety. So I said, the heck with it. I gave it up and started over again. so, so I do have a long time again now, and my recovery this time is totally different than the first time around, because I really took a deeper look as a person in recovery, someone who was burned into recovery, and someone who's worked with thousands of addicts.
Yeah.
And I really believe that there really is just one addiction, and it's that void inside. And until we address that and what caused that void, we are going to remain in that maze. That addiction is just going to move around. For me, it went from, I quit one thing, I'd start the next.
Right.
Quit smoking, start, eating sugar. Quit sugar, start riding long distance bicycles and marathon running and working and then romance, and it would just go on and on and on. And I was never really feeling like I was okay. Lots and lots of therapy, even therapy and spirituality became another addiction, another quest for the fix.
Yeah.
And nothing was fixing me, and I really had to do a really honest, deeper dive into what is really going on here. And out of that came the book, and also out of that came a different approach to treating my own patients, where they now can really face that underlying cause and then learn how to love themselves.
Oh my gosh, that's the key, right? Learn to love yourself.
Yes, yes.
Do you find that one of the obstacles of learning to love yourself is dealing with the guilt and shame?
Yes, I think that guilt and shame perpetuates itself. It starts from that original wound, and then we feel that way when we continue to do the addiction. Once we're not, a lot of people have addictions and they don't realize it. They just think they have a little issue every now and then, or they've gained weight, but they'll lose it, or they don't realize that they're actually addicted to something that's causing their problems. Because it usually takes a crisis before someone is forced to look at it, and even then they may not look at it. So a lot of people don't realize they're addicted, but they do realize that they don't feel good. And if they do realize they're addicted and they keep doing it, of course they feel guilty and ashamed.
Yeah,
Yes. And depending on the addiction, people with sex and love addictions have deep shame. People who continue to get arrested for their addictions, they have deep shame and guilt. And then that just fuels the addiction even more, because the more uncomfortable and the deeper that hole inside, then the more it's got to be covered up and ignored, and keep the lid on it, or whatever we can do to kind of
it's a
try to
vicious
escape
cycle.
our own body.
Yeah. And so did you ever get to the point where you felt like because there's this idea of like brokenness, right? And you use the word, trying to fix myself or trying to get fixed. And I recently have had some awareness around healing instead of fixing.
Yes.
Like we have wounds, so we're not really broken, but we have like these deep wounds that need to get healed. And it seems like maybe an issue of semantics, but it does, like brokenness kind of alludes to not being repairable. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
but like having a wound seems like, okay, well, that can be healed,
Right.
right? Did you ever
Yeah.
get to the root of the wound that caused the void for you?
Yes, I did. And I actually did. The therapy that I got helped a lot with that. But the problem was that I didn't realize that the emptiness, remained because I did not actually know how to love myself. So I
Oh,
continued, even though I healed that original pain, I still had that emptiness. And so I unconsciously didn't realize I was doing this. I was still trying to get that self-love outside of myself, or to that good feeling about myself
yeah.
outside of myself, rather than learning something that I had never really learned, which was how to love myself. And that starts from the moment we're born. There's a huge distinction between a baby that is loved and nurtured and forms a healthy attachment and goes into the world feeling whole, versus someone, and those of us who have, um, it could be something mild or it could be something severe, but there's that emptiness inside that was caused. And then we don't even realize that we're trying to get that feeling of normality and acceptance and feeling okay from outside of ourselves. And of course, there's never enough. There's never
Right.
enough of anything out there that will make me feel okay in here.
Right. It has to, they always say, I mean, I've heard for years, oh, it's an inside job. And it's easy to forget the deep impact that that message really has. Right.
Yes.
I think
Or
as,
to understand what it means.
yeah. And I think
I mean,
as
we kind of
women,
intellectually understand that, but what does
right.
that mean? It's
What
an
does it
inside
like? What
job.
does it mean in here? Like, how do you feel
Right,
that or experience it? And I
right.
feel like as women, we're taught that our value is based on what we look like or how we perform in some way. And I think men have that too, the performance
How much
validation,
money they make.
how much money they make. Yeah. And as women have evolved and grown into, you know, um, the breadwinners and things like that, it's like we've taken that on too. So it's not only what we look like, it's how much money we make as well.
Right.
And then it's like, well, how, like, what are you a good mother? And it's like all these impossible standards, and it's easy to fall back to sleep and to get lulled into that mass mind thinking of, we need to perform, we need to produce, we need to look good and do all that stuff. But that's all external, right? It's like,
Yes. Yes.
when do we take the time to practice the self forgiveness that allows us to practice the self love? And
Right. Right.
it
Well,
can be
forgiveness is
challenging.
just one component that would be something that we want to give ourselves. And if we forgive ourselves, then of course it's natural that we're forgiving other people as well.
Right.
But self-love is a little bit different. That's just one component of it. It's it's the whole shift in perception from um, love love being out there, like we were saying earlier, to love is how, like, here's my body, here's my mind, and how am I nurturing that body and mind?
Hmm.
And so when I'm in an addiction, I'm using a false sense of love. I'm thinking that the candy or the a glass of wine or the cigarette, those are things that I think I'm giving myself as treats. I deserve them, and I should feel better, and I should buy this, and I should make this amount of money, and I should go on this trip, and I should have this boyfriend, and more, 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 more.
Yeah.
I deserve it,
I
and
deserve it.
after all, I've done all this work, and I deserve it, and I have all this stress, and I deserve it. And so what we're not realizing is all those things that I'm substituting for love are all deadly. None of them are good for me. I'm not saying the trip isn't good for me, but I'm talking about that constant spending and that constant getting and self-medicating. Most of those things that I'm doing are having consequences, and yet I continue to do them.
Mhm.
So I'm really hating myself. I'm not loving myself at all. It's not giving me anything other than a little bit of dopamine hit. And we become I'm not to blame. Nobody's to blame. We can't be blamed, because from the moment we come out of the womb, it's constant. You turn on the TV, eat this, drink this, buy this, get this car, get this career, get this beautiful face, get, and you'll feel okay. And the reason the stuff sells so well is in some cases they make it addictive.
Mm.
Like we know for sure cigarettes had addictive chemicals in them that made them even more addictive than the nicotine, which is already about the most addictive drug on the planet. But
Right.
foods with extra sugar, extra fats, all these things that really are toxins to our body and our mind. And yet that's all we're getting programmed with. So we can't blame ourselves that we've been, you said it very good earlier, you said kind of lulled into it. We don't even know that we're unconsciously hypnotized. And now, take pills for everything. All you have to do is just take this magic pill for this and magic pill for that. And none of these solutions to the problem of I'm not okay, but I want to feel okay, I want to look okay, I want to think I'm okay, are solutions. They just create a bigger sense of that hole just grows bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So what my mission is in terms of saving 10 million lives in the next 10 years is to turn the light on. Like,
Yeah.
look at what we're doing, and inspire people to think before they reach for the thing that is literally killing them. I believe that all illnesses that aren't viruses or bacteria or fungi and things like that, uh, up in the 90 percentile rank of them, number one cause of death is heart attack. Number two cause of death is cancer. Okay, well, that's not really the cause. The cause is what causes the heart disease. And if you
Right.
do your research, substances, alcohol, nicotine, sugar, bad fat, stress, things that are addictively done cause the
Right.
heart disease. Same
Right.
thing with cancers. And you can go right down the list of all the major illnesses. And the root of those is addictive behavior, intake of things that causes those diseases, all the way from heart attack, kidney disease, lung disease, diabetes 2,
Right.
stroke. It's accidental deaths, suicides. It
Right.
is uncanny. And so my mission is for us to not be fooled anymore. Like,
Yeah.
rather than looking at my heart disease, looking at my addiction disease,
Right. Yeah.
then we
What
can
is,
stay well. And then we can start dealing with what is causing us to want to do those things in the first place.
and I think that's kind of one of the keys, right? Is what is causing, what is driving the compulsion? You know what I mean? It's so, is
Yes.
it, do you feel like it's different for everyone, or do you feel like because we have this one disease of trying to fill the void, is that the compulsion that drives people to use?
I think that the main cause is that something has happened at some point in someone's life. And it could be subtle. It could be that children just
Right.
weren't allowed to express their emotions in healthy ways, and they got all bottled up and like a little mini storm brewed into a tornado inside, drilling that hole
Yeah.
because all those feelings are trapped in there. And so they learn to just, try to medicate them to get rid of them. And it could be that subtle. A lot of times people say, oh, I had a perfect childhood. But then when I start asking questions like, what
Yeah.
was perfect about it? Oh, we always, had our dinner together and we took trips. Did your parents love each other? Yes, yes. Well, yeah, I mean, well, actually, when I can remember, probably when I was about 10 or 12, they started fighting a lot. My dad I think he had an affair or something, but I don't really know. How did that feel? Well, it didn't feel good, but I asked, my mom what was wrong, and she said, nothing's wrong, nothing at all. So that validation of, what's going on inside of me and being slightly traumatized, if not quite a bit traumatized by seeing my parents and hearing this information and all. I might have thought I had a good childhood. It might have passed and everything, and they're still married and all, but that could have had an effect profoundly.
I hear that a
Or it could
lot.
be something as simple as, oh, here, honey, you're upset. Come over here. I made you some cookies. So there's the message. Don't be sad, eat.
Yes.
The beginnings of the food disorder, the food addiction. So it could take all kinds of forms.
Yeah. And
It's not specific to any one cause, but that cause of emotional unrest
emotional
that isn't
unrest.
resolved.
Yeah, you said trapped feelings, and I had to write that down because that's actually, that just really hit home, because it feels like like in my own experience, I didn't feel like I got good coping skills. And when I mean coping skills, it's like I didn't have a way to manage my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had really big feelings and my
Mm-hmm.
mom didn't know what to do with me. So she
Mm-hmm.
used anger to suppress my feelings.
Mm.
And, they became trapped, like you were
Yeah.
saying. And then
When you say big feelings, what do you mean? Because
um,
I hear you've internalized that your feelings were too intense or something. What?
yeah, too intense for her.
Uh-huh.
Too like I was too sad or too much energy or needy or it just seemed like if I needed anything from her, you know, it was, a lot of times it was no, in the form of like anger or I don't have time for that. It's like happy feelings were okay,
Mm-hmm. So
but
that's a classic case of a mother who is not really available to
oh, for
be the
sure.
parent. So the parent is supposed to rotate around the young child, and so when the child isn't getting that, of course they have big feelings because it's
Mm,
something doesn't feel right, and so the mother can't. The mother wants the child to rotate around her, and that's never going to work because the child definitely doesn't have the skill set to do that, isn't supposed to do that, doesn't know how to do that, but will adapt, will try to adapt and then feel crazy inside, and then they get punished for acting out.
right.
So
And that's what she would tell me. And I think she was trying to find some answers as she was having problems with me. She would say things like, oh, you're going through a stage, like it was my fault or, you know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't
yes,
any sort of like nurturing, loving acknowledgement of,
right.
oh, you need some, yeah, your feelings are, no, feelings. Actually, as a matter of fact, when I was young, she was going through a divorce. I went through a period where all my hair was falling out
Mm,
and it didn't stop until one day she let me crawl up in her lap and just cry it out. And then my hair
uh-huh.
stopped falling out after that.
Wow,
I know, I was like
that's
12,
really powerful,
10, between 10 and
and that's
12.
what you needed to do all along.
I know. It was
When
like the first time she really validated my feelings.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Um, Sorry, I didn't mean to turn this into therapy.
No, but so, this is a beautiful example of what happens. And a lot of
Yeah.
times I'll hear that I turned into an addict because I was too sensitive. I was always told I was too sensitive.
Too sensitive.
And I hear that very often. And
Yeah.
some kids are more sensitive than others. Some
Mhm.
kids are more athletic than others. Some kids are are creative than others. And
Yeah.
so sensitivity is a gift. And so if a child has that gift of sensitivity, then the parent could tell them, you have the gift of sensitivity, and that's a beautiful thing because it's going to give you empathy towards other people, where some
Mm.
people may just be like, oh, let it roll off your shoulders. You're actually going to have a sense of connection and understanding with people that some people don't have. And parents could teach their children that you're going to probably be creative, and you're going to be empathic, and you're going to have all these gifts, and already you're cultivating in that child their natural talents, rather than
Um,
having them be treated that that gift of sensitivity is some type of defect,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Or like you're broken or yeah.
Yes.
I hear that
Yeah.
all the time, like from women in recovery that, oh, you're just too sensitive. Even the men say it too. Men are not, and the poor men, they're not supposed to have any feelings.
Correct.
They're allowed to be hungry, horny, and angry. That's about it.
Correct.
That's all they get.
Right.
And ambitious, or maybe
Right.
that's another one. But yeah, definitely not sad. Definitely not
And
vulnerable.
that framework doesn't create a man and a woman that can have intimacy in a healthy way.
Right. Oh, good point. Yeah. And I have found that in recovery, somebody told me recovery is about recovering your whole self, right?
Mhm.
Defects and all, you
Yes.
know, all the self acceptance. And I really love that idea. That means that we have to accept learn to love our unlovable parts, learn to love the things that the parts that we struggle with, even.
Yes. Yes. We can love ourselves into wellness. We can't hate ourselves into wellness.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so funny. Why do we all do that? We all have like this strong pull towards negative thinking. Is that like a survival skill?
Well, I mean, we learned it by being told we're wrong.
Yeah.
So, we are wrong, not our behavior needs improvement, but we're
Right.
wrong.
We are wrong. Yeah. Fundamentally bad. Um,
Correct.
Tell me a little bit more about the book because you had it broken out into three phases. Do you want to go over the three phases and then we'll kind of dive deeper into each phase?
Right. So, the first thing I point out in the beginning of the book of why treatment fails is that the one cause, first of all, the one addiction's never addressed. And so someone might go to treatment for alcohol, but they leave and then they, start doing drugs. They think they can smoke pot. Or sometimes people go to treatment for cocaine and they think they can drink because they've never had a drinking problem, or they start taking pills and they use them addictively now that the other substances are gone, or they get treated for food and then they start drinking, or they get treated for workaholic and they start major exercise. I mean, the addiction, I like to think of it like there's an invisible hole, and then there's an invisible hose that just wants to plug up to whatever it can to try and fill that space.
Yeah.
So treatment doesn't really address that. They just say, oh, here's your symptom. You have, alcoholism or drug addiction or food disorder or whatever, gambling or, pornography or whatever, and we're going to treat you for that. And they might even go into some of the cause, but they're not really grasping the concept that we would be much better off, even if we don't address it all at once, to recognize that my addiction is manifesting here, 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 and here. And once I take those away, it's going to find here, here, and here, and here too.
Right.
So then I have to look at that cause, like what caused that void? And we've already covered that.
Right.
So since my addiction is going to keep bouncing around, I have to learn how to mourn that pain
Oh,
so that there's no desire to medicate it anymore.
mourn the
And then
pain.
how to love, and that's part of loving myself, but how to fill that place with self-love. And that is basically reparenting myself. This is a little bit different than children of alcoholics, although they talk about it, but literally imagining myself as a newborn baby and
Mm-hmm.
what will my needs be. And that's how I start my day. And then as an adult, I also start my day with things that nourish my soul, because recovery is also about finding a higher power. And we can do that through nature. We can do that through staring at the heavens. We can do that through music. We can do that through anything that brings us that warm, tingly feeling inside.
Mm.
But between self-care, which includes, very importantly, making new friends, having a social life, having connections, having intimacy, and putting the right kinds of foods and nutrients into our bodies, not being willing to poison ourselves anymore, making sure that we're clothed properly, just like a baby. We get
Right.
the bath in the morning, we get our warm little clothes on, mommy cuddles us, that kind of
Right.
thing. She doesn't feed us a shot of whiskey, doesn't give us a glazed donut.
Right. She shouldn't.
We have healthy, good food while our body is forming, and we get enough of the nurturing, and we feel that warm feeling of goodness. And so one of the things I tell people, when you first wake up in the morning, just wrap yourself up in your blankets and say thank you. And a lot of times people early in recovery, they wake up with that doom and gloom feeling. But if you can
Yeah.
start with this really good nurturing stuff, even if you listen to a meditation tape or read
Right.
your favorite book, get plugged in first thing in the morning, get plugged in at night before you go to sleep into that warm, warm sense of spirituality and self-love. And everybody has, I can't tell everybody how to love themselves. I mean, I can't say read your favorite book if you hate reading, but do things that are good for your soul and good for your mind and good for your body. And I have an exercise in the book called Jar of Hearts.
Oh, what
And
is that?
yeah, that's under the section on how to love yourself in the back. And
Mm.
so what I tell people is go get a big jar, glass clear jar, and get some black construction paper and red construction paper. And take the black construction paper and cut it into strips and then kind of wad it up into a ball and fill your jar with that. And that represents your addiction. That represents where you feel, how you feel right now, like this big, dark, black thing inside, this empty base. Then take the red construction paper and make hearts, there's thousands of them. And every single time that you do something loving for yourself, take out a black ball and put in a red heart. And you'll begin to see very quickly how you're learning how to love yourself.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I've never heard that
Yes,
before.
it's a child play kind of thing, but it's very effective because when you can start to see that transformation, like I chose not to drink today, red heart. I chose to spend 5 minutes just sitting and looking outside at the beautiful water, heart in the jar. I decided to arrive to work 10 minutes early so I wouldn't be stressed, jar in the heart.
Oh, yeah.
Heart in the jar. No, I'm saying jar in the heart.
Heart in the jar. I didn't even notice. I was right there with you. I was so tracking.
Right.
Yeah.
Like good choices, loving choices.
I love that visual.
To tell someone how I felt without attacking them, heart in the jar. When I chose to listen to someone who wanted to mend something with me and I could just be that place for them to do that, heart in the jar.
2 hearts for that one. Those are great examples. And I love the visual too, because I have this jar of awesome next to me, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
Someone was like, "Oh, get a jar of awesome," and every time something awesome happens, put it in the jar.
Well, that's a good one too. You could do that, and then every time you remember to put it in the jar, put a heart in your other jar.
Yay! I'll have all kinds of jars. Yeah, and at the end of the year, they say that you can on New Year's, you get out your jar of awesome, and you get to review like all the good things that happened.
Oh, that's
that
a
year.
great idea.
Isn't that fun?
Yes, and I would say every time you remember to do that, put a heart in the jar.
A heart in the jar. I love that. I'm totally gonna get a clear glass jar for that. I don't want to put black paper in it though. Can it be empty?
You can do it however makes you feel the best.
Good, no rules. I don't like rules. But I love that is such a great exercise. I can't wait to try it. And so did we cover all the 3 parts of the book?
Yes, that we want to recognize there's just one addiction. And then the cause, what happened that created that original wound that turned into that void. Okay. And then the cure. Now, I'm not telling anybody that once you have an addiction that you can never resume it. But the cure is when you learn how to love yourself. The thought of doing one of those behaviors is the farthest thing from your mind. In fact, it's just like, ew, why would I want to do that to myself again?
Yeah.
So it's just a natural repulsion to something that would be unloving because now you're feeling good about yourself and you don't have the desire. And it's the same thing, a child who's raised with plenty of self-love. When someone says, here, have this cigarette, they notice what it smells like, they notice what it looks like, and they go, I don't think so, but thanks anyhow, but I don't care for one. Or, no, they imagine the thought of, having alcohol and acting like those people over there who've had too much, they don't want to do that. Or the thought of sticking a needle in their arm and injecting drugs, they're actually visualizing that going through their bloodstream and what it's doing to their heart, and they just won't want to do it. So, and they're so mindful of the connection to feeling good just because they feel good. Like we're born to feel good, and if our needs are met, we grow up feeling good. Yeah, there are rare exceptions where people have biochemical disorders. I'm not disavowing that. And I've worked with people who have not necessarily dual diagnosed, but who have severe, we're talking major depressive disorders, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. But those are rare cases. And nowadays, everybody's kind of getting this dual diagnosis label and put on medication. And I think it's unfortunate because we're overlooking the wound underneath. And I think that's one of the reasons why people who don't take their medication, and so they get stuck in the maze too, like
Mhm.
people with mental illness of major depression, bipolar, and schizophrenia, because they haven't had a chance to heal their wound either. So they've never learned to love themselves either. So, well, I don't really, want to take the medication anymore, and they get
Right.
stuck in that vicious cycle. So, regardless of whether it's the mental illness or the addiction or both, I think that we need to recognize that healing has to those wounds have to be healed. And we have
Absolutely.
to learn how to love ourselves, or we're not going to be able to stay out of the maze. We'll
Right.
keep moving around in it.
Love is the answer.
Hmm.
Well, listen, I just want to thank you so much for your time this morning. And I'll leave links for the book and
Perfect.
resources. I know on your website you have a self evaluation questionnaire, and who doesn't love a self assessment, right?
Yes,
So
yes. They can sign up on their email address, and we'll get that to them. All they have to do is request it.
awesome. Great. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time this morning. And I look forward to speaking with you again real soon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. The end.